I don't think we have sound, do we? Is this mic on? Yeah, oh great, okay. Well, hello everyone. Can you hear me okay? All right. Thanks for being here. What a day in Ragged Lake. My name is Andy Fillmore. I have the great privilege of being the Member of Parliament for Halifax and the Parliamentary Secretary to Canada's Minister of Infrastructure and Communities, Catherine McKenna. Thank you all for joining us this morning on Mi'kma'ki, the traditional and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people, where we are all treaty people. It's very heartwarming to see Bernadette Jordan here. Bernadette is the MP for South Shore St. Margarets. We happen to be in that federal riding today. And she's also the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans. It's great to see you, Premier Rankin. Welcome. Minister McGuire, lovely to see you here. Mayor Savage, Councillor Cuddle, Councillor Mason.
Recording in
my
progress.
In the House of Commons, Darren Fisher, MP for Dartmouth Cole Harbour, Jeff Regan, Halifax. You can tell this is an important day because people have come from far and wide to help Halifax Transit and the province of Nova Scotia celebrate what it is that we're here to talk about today. Now, when we talk about climate change, we all know that there's no silver bullet. There's no one single cure for a solution for this all-encompassing problem. Rather, cutting our emissions to reach net zero by 2050, part of our government's new, more ambitious, and now legislated climate targets, requires us to put a climate lens on everything that we do, on every decision that we make going forward. My very first act as the MP for Halifax in 2015 was to table and have passed a private member's motion that did just that, to put a climate lens on the funding of all federally funded infrastructure projects in Canada. And that's because the infrastructure that we invest in today has the potential to lock in emissions and carbon usage for decades to come, for lifetimes to come. So the decisions we make today have ramifications far beyond today. In fact, at this very moment, we are battling the consequences of a decade of inaction by a previous federal government who ignored the climate disaster altogether. Now, this summer, Canada smashed through the previous record of the hottest temperature ever recorded in our country. The climate crisis is here. We must do everything it takes across all orders of government, across all sectors of society to fight it. And every Canadian has a role to play. Our government understands the urgency, and so does Nova Scotia's Premier, Iain Rankin. And that's why we're here today. To tell us more, won't you please help me welcome Premier Iain Rankin.
Thanks very much, Andy. And it's really great to be here. On behalf of the province, I do want to acknowledge that we're on Mi'kma'ki, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And this is also Timberley Prospect, my constituency. So it's really great to be here at Ragged Lake. And as we start to emerge from this pandemic, it's really important as we start to get our second dose coverage out there that we look at how we want our economy to look like and how we rebuild our economy. So as you could probably have noticed throughout the last number of months and certainly recently in the weeks, the announcements and the investments that we're making in people really speak to the need to make sure that this economic recovery is more inclusive and more sustainable. We want to be part of the sustainable revolution in Nova Scotia. And part of our economy is how we move people around. And so that's what today is about. We announced on day one of this government 4 months ago that we were going to incentivize more people to get out of gas-powered engine vehicles and start to drive more electric vehicles. Something that's made fun of by the Houston Conservatives. But it's needed. We need to make sure that we're looking at how we electrify transportation. And that's what today is about on a more broader scale. And I'm happy to have partners in the federal government and the municipal government that support this direction. We have bold, ambitious targets to hit in climate change. Andy referenced the 2050 net zero target that's in legislation. We were one of the first, I think we were the first province to put that in legislation as well. We want to be the first province to reach net zero before 2050. We want to double our renewable energy by 2030. We have about just shy of 40%. We've announced in legislation recently that we will hit 80% by 2030, and we'll be off coal 10 years earlier than originally planned. It's really important because electricity is the #1 source of emissions in this province. So we're doing a lot to make sure that we green our grid. But the second largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in this province is transportation. So you don't have a climate plan without focusing on transportation as well. This announcement today will ensure that we remove 3,800 tons of GHGs by 2030. And the provincial contribution to this is $37 million to bring 60 electric buses to Ragged Lake and make sure that we do some deep energy retrofits to this building. That's a massive investment that leverage federal funds that my colleague will be speaking about, municipal funds that the mayor will be speaking about. This is a big project, and this is how we get things done to make sure that we're growing a more sustainable, inclusive economy. And I'm proud that we have partners at this time that we can really start to jump into the sustainable revolution, and electrifying our transportation is a big part of that. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Premier Rankin. I'm now going to turn the microphone over to my friend and colleague, Bernadette Jordan, the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans and the Member of Parliament for South Shore St. Margaret's.
Thanks, Andy. You're taller than I am. It's, well, welcome everyone to South Shore St. Margaret's. This is actually the easternmost end of my riding, and it's great to be here today to make this announcement with the Premier and the Mayor, and on behalf of my colleague, Catherine McKenna, and also great to see my House of Commons colleagues here, Darren Fisher, Jeff Regan. I would be remiss if I didn't say this used to be part of Jeff's riding, and he has been a stellar MP for Halifax West. And Jeff, thank you so much for everything that you've done. So the last 16 months, as we all know, have been extremely challenging, and there is no denying that. The pandemic has impacted every single Canadian, some more than others, and in very different ways. Families were separated, borders were closed, businesses struggled, kitchen tables became classrooms. But through it all, our government has worked to determine where the help was needed and to get the help out to Canadians. That's why we created the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, to make sure that anyone who lost a job had their income that they needed because of COVID that was replaced, so that they could keep their bills paid and the food on the table. It's why we created the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy. So as well as the rent subsidy, we had to make sure that small businesses were able, through lockdowns and border closures, to be able to have what they needed to survive. And it's why earlier this week, our government announced the $605 million investment to reduce childcare costs by 50% by 2022 and down to $10 a day by 2026. This is such a game changer for so many families, and something I'm extremely proud of. Women have bared the majority of the brunt of the pandemic when it came to economic challenges. So caring for children is going to be huge for us as we go forward. And especially in the wake of the pandemic, we saw the women's participation in the workforce drop to the lowest level in more than 2 decades. I spoke earlier this week about what a difference this agreement would have made for me and my family 30 years ago. And I'm still emotional when I think about it. But I'm also thinking about how excited I am for the future generation. And I'm also filled with hope right now, not only because of the investment we made in childcare, but also with the investments we're making in other areas. We're on our way out of this pandemic. Our government has distributed nearly 52 million vaccine doses to provinces and territories, and over 1.3 million have been delivered directly here to Nova Scotians. Well over 1 million Nova Scotians have now received their first dose, and almost half of that number are fully vaccinated. And I want to do a big shout out to the Premier and Dr. Strang for all they did during this pandemic to get us through this. Our borders are opening and up to the rest of Canada, and that's an exciting time for businesses in the area. And our province has been a clear leader on how to flatten the curve, and Nova Scotia has been an incredible example of how the world on how you hunker down, be kind, follow public health advice, protect ourselves, our families, and our friends and our neighbors. Sitting around the cabinet table, I can't tell you how proud I have been to speak about our province and the collective effort we've made this last year and a half. And that brings me to the reason why we're all here today. As the pandemic comes to an end, we have to think about the communities we want to build up in the future. Greener, more livable communities with cleaner air and quicker commutes. And just because we had a global health crisis doesn't mean we could ignore the climate crisis. That's why the federal government is investing $44.8 million to expand the Ragged Lake Transit Center and purchase 60 battery electric buses for the Halifax transit fleet. This project is a win-win. We're taking something people use every day, transit, and making it better. It's about building a future that's greener, more sustainable, and it's never been more important than right now. Our government is committed to moving to net zero emissions by 2050, but we can't achieve net zero emissions alone. We need to work together. That's why we're partnering with the province of Nova Scotia and the Halifax Regional Municipality to make it happen right here at home. When you think about it, our commutes are huge, and they're a huge part of our everyday lives. Take it from someone who has to commute to Ottawa for work. We should be thinking critically about how we make that better. That's why the federal government is investing in active transportation networks like bike paths, walking trails, safe sidewalks. And I want to thank Andy Fillmore for all of the hard work he's done on that file. And they also create more livable spaces, more affordable transportation options, healthier people, and good jobs. Altogether, the Government of Canada has invested over $920 million in more than 286 infrastructure projects across Nova Scotia through our Investing in Canada plan. That includes upgrades and improvements to 76 schools, 33 long-term care facilities, and 7 hospitals. I said on Tuesday, as we announced the new childcare agreement, that the job of government is to make things better. I really believe that. We can't just maintain things. It's our job to dream, to plan, and to build big things that make lives better. That's why this new Ragged Lake Transit Center and the fleet battery electric buses will do for the people of Halifax. That's what the new bike paths and walking trails will do. There's more to do, but together we're building a greener, healthier, better communities right across Nova Scotia. Thank you very much. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you for that, Minister Jordan. You know, federal governments and provincial governments can make a lot of big plans and express objectives through the funding that they offer. But we know that it's the people that are on the ground that really make the difference. As a person who spent many years as a municipal staffer, I've been on the other side of this equation many times. And I know that where the magic happens is with the staff team. Patricia Hughes, the Director of Planning and Operations, is here today. Dave Reege's not the Director of Halifax Transit, but there's an incredible Halifax Transit staff team here who have done remarkable work on helping to lead this transition to electrification. And that's the kind of work, again, I know from being on that side of it, that is uplifted and accelerated by strong municipal leadership, like we have in Mayor Savage. Mayor Savage, would you like to come up and say a few words?
Thank you very much, Andy. Merci. Bonjour tout le monde. Gwe. I also want to acknowledge that we're on the ancestral and the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people in Nova Scotia. We are all treaty people. Minister Jordan, it's always a pleasure to see you. Saw you yesterday. Premier Rankin, members of Parliament, Andy Fillmore, Darren Fisher, my friend and neighbor, and Jeff Regan. And not sure if I'll have many opportunities to do announcements with Jeff. Who knows? They're coming pretty fast. But I want to thank Jeff. You know, I spent 7 years in Parliament with Jeff, which is about 1/10 of his tenure in the House of Commons. And he is one of the most respected parliamentarians in Canada. And it's been a pleasure to work with you. Minister Maguire, we've never had a more accessible minister to work with, municipal affairs. I want to also recognize Councillor Way Mason, who's the chair of our Transportation Committee. And I think he's still the chair. And Patty Cuttle, who is the councillor for this area, right? So we got the councillor from this area, the MLA from this area, the minister from this area, and the mayor. This is my district too. So I'm so pleased to be here to share this great announcement for Halifax. This investment in Atlantic Canada's first electric transit fleet speaks to the commitments that we've made to be better citizens of our planet through our Halifax climate strategy. Make no mistake, and the dream team of Halifax Transit who are here today know as well as anybody, it is transformative for us. It is transformative for our city. It is, as they say, a bloody big deal. This investment says that we are unapologetically pro-public transit, that we know residents of this community want to take the bus or the ferry. Electrification of transit is fundamental to our belief that cities and communities can grow in responsible ways, that we can build complete, connected communities where people can access the services that they need without getting into a car. It would have been easy after the bruising that all transit systems took during the pandemic to back away from such a major level of investment. But I'm really grateful to the orders of government, all of whom are here today and who have determined otherwise, recognizing that we can and we will see a return to pre-COVID ridership growth. No doubt the officials who are here today share a belief that if we are to come back strong, we must invest in those things that make us better, make us a more resilient community. We must align our investments with the ambitions of our city. Indeed, if this pandemic has taught us anything, it is that Halifax is a city where people want to be more and more. A city that must plan well now as we continue to attract young people and newcomers from around the world. Through our integrated mobility plan, as well as Halifax, we will continue to make improvements to transit infrastructure and the entire transportation system. Increasingly, residents want cleaner, greener options. They want to be part of climate plans that include active transportation, public transit, and electric vehicles. This ties in very well with announcements we made in the last few years, again, with the help of other orders of government. And I have to recognize Andy and the work that Andy's done as the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Infrastructure and Communities, and Minister McKenna, who has announced that she's leaving office as well after a very distinguished career. Andy, we've been together in a lot of announcements, and I know you've been front and center in many of them. The All Ages and Abilities Bike Network, a $25 million project that pays big dividends for our city. The announcement earlier this year, the $400 million on active transportation and cycling, which I know had your fingerprints all over it. We have to be a more equitable and a more sustainable society, and we have to give citizens the opportunity to be part of that. Today's investment marks a tremendous first stop on a reliable route that will get us where we need to go. Thank you all very much. Merci beaucoup. Walaliak.
Thank you so much, Mayor Savage. Now, of course, your work and the work of council and the work of Halifax Transit staff is made much easier by having an accessible and interested Provincial Minister of Municipal Affairs. And we certainly have that in the inimitable Brendan Maguire. Minister, would you please come and say a few words?
That'd be nice. So Andy and I, thank you for the introduction, Andy. Andy's actually my MP, so he has to be nice to me. But I also want to recognize Patty Cuddles. She's here in the crowd somewhere, who is my the new councillor for the community I represent, and we represent together. And it's an honor and a pleasure to work with you. I've never met anyone that works so hard, so it's fantastic. To the staff here at Metro Transit, thank you for having us here today. To the mechanics, the bus drivers, everyone that was on the front line of the pandemic. We know it wasn't easy. We have a deep appreciation for all you've done to keep this city moving. To the guys in the back, the guys and the girls in the back that make us sound good, thank you so much for the audio-visual work. And to the Premier, I'm going to go off script a little bit, but to the Premier and my friend, someone I call a good friend, Iain Rankin, the last couple of days have it's been emotional days for me. Anyone that knows me knows that how much childcare has meant to me, and how much I've worked with Iain before he was the Premier, and how much we've worked together on this. It's a historical moment for Nova Scotia. It's one that's going to really level the playing field. It's going to allow for more women to get back into the workforce. And on a personal note, I've got 3 children. My partner, Rena, who hates when I mention her in public, but she had a fantastic career. We had children. She made the decision on her own that she wanted to stay home with those children, Oliver, Rafina, and Isla, and her career was set back because she was out of the workforce for 8 years. This is somebody who went from making really good money and being at the top of her career to making less than $20 an hour when she went back into the workforce. So the childcare announcement is something that I'll forever remember as an MLA and as a father. This announcement today is also something that it's an announcement for now, but it's an announcement for the future. It's an announcement for my children, for our children, and as the Prime Minister let out of the bag. Premier Rankin, Premier Rankin, they have one expecting. So it's an announcement for all our children and for our future. And it's going to make Nova Scotia a place even more desirable for people who want to live here. So I want to thank my good friend and the Premier of Nova Scotia. I want to thank Andy Fillmore because I know he's been pushing for this for a long time. Minister Jordan, Mayor Savage, who it's been an incredible honor to work side by side with you, and all of you here today. Regan, as he retires, I know this is a big one for him, and Fisher. All of you have done, and Way. Have we thanked everybody in the crowd? Is there anyone who hasn't been thanked yet? Huh? I said Way. Is there anyone? We'll thank the media, Mike Gorman and you guys. Thank you for everything. Yeah. Thank all of you for being here today. This is another step forward in our collective goal to achieve our carbon neutral by 2050. So with every project that we announce, we get that much closer. We're forging ahead. This is a big one for this province. It's a big one for HRM. And it's a major step forward on carbon neutrality. This will provide cleaner, quieter, and more efficient mode of transportation for HRM residents. But more importantly, it will keep the air we breathe cleaner, and it'll reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. I'm proud of the work here today. I know a lot of people, a lot of minds, a lot of effort went into this. And this is going to help create a greener, more sustainable future for all Nova Scotians. Once again, thank you for everyone for being here, and thank you for everyone that had a part in this. And for myself, my children, and Nova Scotia, it's a great day.
Thanks, Brendan. Everyone who's spoken today probably hears on a fairly regular basis, geez, politics is tough. Why? I could never get into it. Why do you do it? It's from days like today and days like yesterday. This is why we are all called to this work. It's important work, and we do it with an incredible cast of partners. Now, as you've heard, this is a historic investment for our country. This is the largest federal investment in transit in recent memory in Nova Scotia, perhaps ever in Nova Scotia. And by working together with provincial and local governments, the federal government is able to make our big dreams for Halifax reality. This project is going to support our common vision for a greener, more livable, more just, and healthier future for Halifax. Now, recently, the City of Halifax released its best-in-class climate plan called Halifax. And I just want to offer a huge thank you and congratulations to Shannon Medema, the manager of Sustainable Environment, and her team, and to the mayor and council for helping to make that work possible, for their vision and leadership on that plan. The government of Canada is here to support the Halifax goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 75% below 2016 levels by 2030, and the goal of achieving net zero emissions in Nova Scotia by 2050. In the last few weeks, we announced the planning phase of a net zero Bedford ferry route that will add greener transit options for Haligonians. We've also announced a green energy investment for the Cogswell District energy system. Now, the fight against climate change is real, and the government of Canada is investing in public infrastructure that will help us reach those important climate goals. Thanks to all of our speakers and to all of the staff members who are present and who worked behind the scenes. Thanks to our friends in the media for being here to help tell this important story of this historic announcement. I'm going to invite questions now of the speakers. Because of lingering COVID protocols, I think we'll just sort of leave people where they are, and we'll invite speakers up to the podium and answer that way. And for a start, we'll go one question, one follow-up, and see how we do. Can I ask who is the first question for, and we'll bring that person up. Start with the mayor. And I'm sorry, we have one thing. Oh, okay. So never mind one question, one follow-up. Let her rip. Okay. And it's the mayor, please.
This is the first phase of electric buses that we're bringing in, the 60 that we're bringing in today. But our plan is to have a totally electrified fleet by 2028. And we think we might be able to do it faster with continued support from government.
But is it your expectation, though, that when these 60 arrive, you're going to retire 60 buses?
You'd have to ask Transit. I believe that that's the case, that these will be replacing the traditional diesel buses.
What's the cost per unit? Is the cost per unit similar to?
Well, I think we have people here from Transit who can answer that question better. We think right now that the cost of an electric bus is higher right now, but that cost will come down. There's going to be a big demand for electric buses. So the cost per unit will be determined. We'll do an RFP to determine the best way to get these buses. But we think over time, including operating costs, that it'll be actually a very effective way to move people.
So since it's being done through an RFP, can you say for certain that it's going to be 60 buses, or is that sort of the rough estimate?
It's 60 buses to start.
How big is the fleet?
I don't know. How big is our fleet? 100 and... Patricia, I'm going to ask Patricia Hughes. She loves to come up and answer questions, and she's so good at it. So the question is, how many buses do we have? And do we have nicknames for all of them? And can you give us all the nicknames of the buses? Patricia, come on.
Thank you. We currently have about 340 standard buses this size. We have other subfleets of paratransit and specialized, but the buses that would be replaced by electric, we have about 340. This project does include, it would be an expansion to this building to house the electric fleet, and it would include all of the project includes all of the infrastructure and chargers.
So how much of the money in that today would go to the building?
Ballpark, the building is about 15 million roughly. The buses are more. The buses and the charger together are 90 million-ish. The technology is really still evolving, so it depends on the buses and the batteries and the charging system. So there's a lot of variation. We're looking into that now to make sure that we're well aligned. It is. We're watching really closely what the other transit agencies across Canada are doing, and they are seeing lower operating costs. Obviously, there's fuel savings, and we don't have exact numbers on it yet, but that's definitely part of our main interest in this.
Once you do this RFP, will that sort of get the system to the charge?
Yes. Yep. Thanks.
Thank you for remembering those things I told you, Patricia. And just the last thing I'll say is that, we have a plan for electrification of buses, of ferries, of bus rapid transit. And that is a big ticket item. That's over 600, maybe $700 million. We'll be coming back to talk to these folks again. But today is a huge issue, a big deal for us. This gets us on the way and commits us to a lower carbon future and getting more and more people on the buses. And by the way, as you know, we have a low-income transit plan, which we've worked together with the province to provide transit for people who can't afford to be on it, but still have to get to their doctor or to work. Thank you very much.
Province hasn't typically been very interested in getting funding transit for this. That appears to be. Why is that?
Well, I do know some of the history. You're right; they were out of the game for a significant period of time. But we did in 2013 invest a couple $1 million in transit when we first came in to help with the Lacewood expansion. And I think that as a province, that we should be helping incentivize people. And the climate crisis is real. How we try to make sure that people have different options to get around. That speaks to active transit investments we've made. So I think the province does have a role in public transit. We're looking at future partnerships. We always like to find ways that we can leverage, especially an ambitious climate plan that the federal government has. And that's in large part how we're able to get so much done in this province. And yes, we'll be looking at more partnerships.
So Mike's question, would you consider providing operating funding to municipalities for transit, or just town?
That's not on the table right now. Of course, like we're always looking to work together in ways that they have transit under their jurisdiction, but partnerships is how we get things done. And there are other municipalities, and we want to make sure that we're working with them as well.
Premier, is this money coming out of this year's budget, or is this the future?
This is this year's budget. Yes.
Is this money that's already built into the budget?
It's budgeted for. Yes. Yeah.
So you've been aware of this?
We were working on it for a long time, working with the federal government, even predating the discussion started before I became premier, and we moved on it. Yeah. Thanks.
I wonder if I could just offer a thought on the federal funding piece. So the federal piece of this is coming through the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Plan, ICIP. That's a 10-year national program for community infrastructure. One of the 5 streams of funding is public transit and active transportation. So the federal piece of this is coming through that stream. That stream, all of ICIP, those 5 streams sunset only until 2026. That 10 years is up in 2026. At that time, the Prime Minister announced earlier this year that the federal government will go to a permanent public transit funding model. So it's not just going to be this one-time program that we're in now, ICIP. We're going to go to permanent full-time public transit funding that will help with active transportation and public transit. So the question, will there be more announcements like this? Yes, there will be. They won't stop. They'll accelerate it, would be my expectation.
So do you want pictures here or? Yeah, sure. All right, no problem. So where are we going? You lead the way. All righty.
So you